Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right, welcome back to my channel. I am your host, G.I. Wingnut. We are working on this book, How Trump Rescued Scientology from the Deep State. We're up to page 17, The War of the Deep State Against Dianetics, Scientology, and the Hubbard Family. This marked the beginning of the Deep State War, as we now call the unconstitutional and criminal cancers in governments, the military, and intelligence services that JFK branded in its famous April 27th, 1961 speech as the conspiracy of the, quote, military-industrial complex, end quote, against Hubbard and his research. Military-industrial complex was a term that was coined by President Dwight David Eisenhower before he left office as a warning to the American people to not let the military-industrial complex take over. So that's what the deep state is, at least according to Roger Stone, who was a mentee of Roy Cohn. That's a topic for another time. So back to the book. Research that Hubbard privately financed from his royalties, thus preserving independence from other interest groups. When this cabal attempted to bring Hubbard under its control through military discipline to keep his national security research secret, Golden Cage, he had himself unceremoniously expelled. 6 weeks later, in May of 1950, he wrote and published his research in the book Dianetics, so it could not be kept secret, at the detriment of man. So it could not be kept secret at the detriment of man. Oh, good grief. I'm going to have to throw some directions over to some stuff about what Dianetics is all about. But it's mind control. It's mind control. Bottom line. So, the Dianetics book became an 83 million bestseller. I think he probably means 83 million copy bestseller. Anyway. The book immediately made the New York Times bestseller list and remained there for week after week for 2 long years. It spread like wildfire, training tens of thousands who used it to rid themselves of mental and physical ailments, rejuvenate and enhance IQ, and increase their mental abilities. No, that's not what happened. Even though they have a superpower school, it's really no more effective than Bethel's Supernatural, or was it Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, BSSM? They're about as reliable as these guys over here at Scientology. All right, back to the book. Today, the Dianetics book has been translated into over 50 languages, and has a total circulation of over 83 million copies. Oh, that's 83 million they already sold. The enthusiasm of experts, and bear in mind this was back in 1950s. So anyway, the enthusiasm of experts for Dianetics can be seen in the chapter Introduction of the Medical Doctor J.A. Winter. Okay. So there are chiropractors and dentists that are Scientologists and apply their training to their trade, their craft. So an introduction of the medical doctor J.A. Winter doesn't carry any weight for me. Moving on. Significantly, this chapter from the 1950 Dianetics First Edition, which contrasts and exposes the authoritarianism with the concept of technical authority, was omitted by Scientology's own New Era publishing house. In its most recent Dianetics edition, authoritarianism has become commonplace there today. So he's calling out David Miscavige, which somebody has already commented on part 1, and I've already spotted it in the book because I kind of glanced through it. The author of this tome does accuse David Miscavige of being a CIA plant. So let's get on to page 19. Claims to a monopoly or free use. The Church of Scientology tries to claim a monopoly over Dianetics. We deny that, right? We rightly invoke L. Ron Hubbard's own words from the third part of the Dianetics book. Quote, "It belongs to man, and it is doubtful if anyone could manage to gain a corner on it, for it does not fall within any legislation of any kind, in any place. And if Dianetics were legislated into a licensed profession, then it is to be feared that licensing to stories and jokes and personal experience would also have to be legislated into a profession." Wow. All right. Such laws would put all men of goodwill to lend a sympathetic ear to a friend's troubles inside the barbed wire. Dianetics is not psychiatry. It is not psychoanalysis. It is not psychology. It is not personal relations. It is not hypnotism. It is a science of mind and needs about as much licensing and regulation as the application of the science of physics. Oh yeah, that's right. L. Ron Hubbard didn't believe in the nuclear bomb. He just saw it as a messed weapon. Let's see, what is that? Matter, energy, space, and time. His concepts of what makes up the universe. Back to his little blurb here. Legislation exists about psychoanalysis in some 3 states in the Union. Legislation against or about psychiatry exists everywhere. If an auditor wishes to constitute himself as a psychiatrist with the power of vivisecting human brains, if he wants to constitute himself a doctor and administrator of drugs and medicines, if he wants to practice hypnotism and pour suggestions into a patient, then he must square it with psychiatry, medicine, and the local laws about hypnotism, for he has entered other fields than Dianetics. In Dianetics, hypnotism is not used. No brains are operated upon, and no drugs are given unless the local medico is part of the staff. I got to interject here. They do this thing that's called, in Scientology, that they call the purification rundown. And there's some high potency vitamins that are taken, like really high doses of niacin. And I'm not sure what else, but the niacin really stands out because it's the risky one. But high doses of niacin, and then extended sessions, like 5-hour-long sessions in a sauna. No wonder so many Scientologists have health issues later in life. Scientology also doesn't believe in the application of medication for treatable diseases, which is why some of the Scientologists have died of curable cancers. All right, back to the blurb. Dianetics is not in any way covered by legislation anywhere, for no law can prevent one man sitting down and telling another man his troubles. And if anyone wants a monopoly on Dianetics, be assured that he wants it for reasons which have to do not with Dianetics, but with profit. The emphasis in bold by this editor, in bold is by this editor, Hubbard was far-sighted. Quote, "The Church of Scientology's monopoly claim to Dianetics, however, is not based on the profit from its application, for Dianetics is suppressed today by its own management but by the profit that Big Pharma would lose through the application of Dianetics. So, again, just like QAnon and so many folks over there in the Republican Party that lean so hard to the right, they have problems with Big Pharma. Now, there are issues with the whole system, but that's where I think there's some changes that need to be made. I'll keep those to myself for now. So let's go ahead and get back to this book. Big Pharma fights natural remedies and self-help procedures. No, they don't. Anyway, the success story of Dianetics, however, was found by a massive, let me try that again. The success story of Dianetics, however, was fought by a massive smear campaign by the mass media, already influenced by Big Pharma at that time. Brought to you by Pfizer. They did not want to accept the fact that the chronic illnesses and ailments can be quickly eliminated by a side effect free and cost effective self help practice. Such an idea makes hundreds of billions of dollars in drugs completely unnecessary. Since the early 1950s, the CIA and the FBI have been mandated to infiltrate the expanding Dianetics movement in order to slow down expansion from within. Dianetics proves the existence of past lives, allegedly. Hubbard continued his research and discovered in 1951 that beyond the insights of Dianetics, the earliest events aren't during the prenatal period, but from far earlier lives that can still have an effect on a person today. I think the Buddhists call that karma. Of course, this was at the time dismissed as fantasy. It was a new and unfamiliar idea in the Western world, though times have changed, and today 80% of the people accept that earlier lives are possible. That there are spiritual beings in a physical, or that we are spiritual beings in a physical body, like a puppet master uses his puppets. This realization of the existence of a spirit being, now called Thetan, laid the foundation for Scientology. Psychiatrists in the early years refuted the claims of Dianetics that all perceptions can be recorded by the individual and regained in auditing, even in times of unconsciousness. To this end, they implanted sequences of numbers, including secrets, into their patients under drug hypnosis and electric shock, and sent them to Hubbard with the request to reveal these contents from their therapy, and thus prove his assertions. Pardon me. Much to their surprise and dismay, he was able to do just that. The assured side effects of the psychiatric ill treatment were, of course, severe psychosomatic damage. Ron gave a lecture on Black Dianetics on September 17, 1951, and 1 year later published an essay of the same name. Death, insanity, aberration, or merely a slavish obedience can be efficiently affected by the use of Black Dianetics. Thus, the first principle of Black Dianetics, so long as a natural phenomenon remains the knowledge of a few and is denied to the many, it can be utilized to control the many. In order to resolve insanity, it is necessary to release the natural laws discovered in Dianetics. When they were released, it became possible to create insanity at will, and even more insidiously, complete control of a human being can be effected without insanity being demonstrated by him. That sounds like a Manchurian Candidate concept. All right, moving on. The release of these laws and the whole of Black Dianetics is necessary if a long-range program of prevention is to be effective. So long as Black Dianetics remains the property of the very few, and very great many more will suffer eventually than those few who will die because of the publication of this material. In the public lecture of 6 December 1952, entitled Formative State of Scientology, Definition of Logic, Ron adds to his warning against the danger of Black Dianetics and Black Scientology by saying, "Did you ever read poor old George Orwell's 1984? Yes, that's wonderful. That could be the palest imagined shadow of what a world would look like under the rule of the secret use of Scientology with no remedy in existence. And if you ever do use any Black Dianetics, use it on the guy who pulled Scientology out of sight and made it so it wasn't available, because he's the boy who would be elected himself New World Order. We don't need any more new orders. All those orders, as far as I'm concerned, have been filled." The author goes on to say, "I had bought this lecture on MC cassette, published date 1986. In 1991, CD release of the same lecture came out without the above quoted sentences. They gave away too clearly the purpose of the New World Order against Scientology." Let's see, who was it that made that phrase so famous for us in modern times? Wasn't that Vice President turned President Bush, the Reagan VP? A New World Order? Anyway. Let's go ahead and cut it on at this point, and I'll be back with more. I hope y'all have enjoyed this, and please give it a thumbs up and share it with anybody that you think might find this beneficial. I'll be talking to you on the next one.